Okay, today we're going to be making some peach jam with these beautiful big peaches that I have. And I'm going to show you the easiest way to peel your peaches first. So you see I've got some water boiling over here, and I got some peaches in a bowl that I've started with. And you're going to start by taking your peach, and what you want to do is you want to take a paring knife and cut an X into the bottom of your peach. And you don't want to go really deep, you just want to go into the skin of the peach. And then you can take your peach and you want to dip it in the boiling water for about 10 to 15 seconds. And then you're going to get your peach out, and you're immediately going to put it into an ice bath. That stops the cooking process. And this makes getting the skin off the peach really easy, because all you do at that point is you take your knife and just kind of lift up on the skin, and you can peel it right off. You see how easy that comes off? And there you have it. So I'm going to go ahead and peel and skin all of the peaches that I have, and then I'll come back to you in just a few minutes. Alright, now we've got all of our peaches peeled, and we're ready to process them. And something that I just found out recently is there are two different kinds of peaches. They are known as the clingstone or the freestone. Clingstone peaches means that the peach clings to the pit, and they're great for eating. But if you want a peach that's easy to peel and core for processing, for making jams and jellies or putting in the freezer, you want the freestone, and that's what we have here. The freestone peaches. And when you get ready to slice your peach, you can take your knife and just kind of go around the whole perimeter of the peach. And the great thing about these freestone peaches is that when you do that, they just peel right off of the pit on one side, and then you can just easily pull the pit out of the other side. Also, after you've peeled your peaches like we've done, you want to take a few lemons. For about every 8 peaches that you have, you want to take the juice of a lemon and squeeze it over the peaches, and that keeps them from turning brown while you're trying to process them. So I'm going to get ready to cut up all my peaches and pit them like this before I process them. And I can't say enough about my KitchenAid. It has more than paid for itself for me doing all the canning that I do. Having all the attachments, it makes the job so much easier if you have a food processor, because for making jam like I'm getting ready to do here, I can run it through my KitchenAid, which I'll show you in a minute, and just mash all the peaches up and the juice and everything. You don't waste any of the peach either. So it's a great tool to have, and I'll kind of show you how easy it is. Now at this point also, if you want to just freeze some of your peaches rather than making jam, you can slice them up into slices and put them in freezer bags. Add a little bit of sugar, which helps the peach release the juice if you add the sugar to it. Like maybe half a teaspoon of sugar for every peach, or half a tablespoon for every peach that you put in your gallon bags, and put them in your freezer, and you can keep them and and use them for pies or cobblers or to eat. So my KitchenAid really makes light work processing these peaches. You can see I'm not wasting any of my peach. I'm getting juice and pulp and everything. Which is what we're going to be using to make our jam. So that's just to give you an idea. If you can invest the money into a KitchenAid, invest into something like a KitchenAid that will more than pay for itself. It will make your work so much easier when you're trying to can. Okay, now we're ready to get started on making our jam. I've got my water in my canner heating up, and I've already got my jars in the canner, because you want to get your jars good and hot before you have your jam ready to ladle into them, because you don't want to put hot jam into cold jars, or that's just a disaster waiting to happen. You're going to burst your jars. So you don't want to boil the jars, you just want to get them good and hot. And in addition to the jars, also the lids that need to be heated as well. So I'll just drop some lids in there. And to make your jam, you're going to start with 4 cups of the nice good mixture that we just made from our KitchenAid. I got 2 big bowls of it. And I'm going to drain some of the juice off of the jam because I'll save the juice to make jelly with. So we're going to start with about 4 cups. As I said, I'm going to drain. Pot I'm going to be putting it in, so I just keep from making a huge mess. I'll get my pot over here where I'm working. I like to use a big deep pot because when you're cooking jam and jelly it splatters a lot, so to keep from making a big mess and burning yourself from the splattering, I like to use just a deeper pot for it. We'll end up with a lot of juice to make some jelly with. So that's about 2 cups. I like to use a strainer that's real small. The netting in it's really small, so it does get out a lot of that pulp. 2 more cups. My peaches. And to this you're going to add 2 tablespoons of lemon. Now I like to use freshly squeezed lemon, but I don't have any today, so today I'm just using lemon. Recipes for this size batch of jam that I'm making right now are going to tell you to use about 4 tablespoons of this. I put in about 6 because 4 doesn't really make it gel enough. I like it to be a little more jelly texture to it. So we're going to dump in 4 tablespoons of our pectin, or 6 rather, I'm sorry. And in addition to that, one of the tricks to keep your jelly and jam from foaming when you get ready to ladle it is to add about a tablespoon or half a tablespoon of butter or margarine. that cook for about a minute. My jars are getting good and hot here. So after this cooks for about a minute and dissolves your pectin and your butter and everything else that's in it, then you're going to add your sugar. We're going to add 5 cups of sugar. For those of you that are a little more health conscious and you don't like using white sugar, you can substitute agave nectar or honey. Just use the equal amount. So instead of 5 cups of sugar, use 5 cups of honey or 5 cups of agave nectar. But when you add your sugar, you want to add it all at once. So we'll wait till this starts coming to a good boil before we add the sugar. And the other trick is you don't want to stop stirring it. Once you add your sugar in there, you really want to stir it the whole time until you get it back to a hard rolling boil. Because if you stop stirring it, it's going to stick and scorch and burn. Add your sugar, like I said, you're going to bring it back to a good hard rolling boil, and at that point you want to boil it for 60 seconds. So our mixture is finally starting to boil. It's boiling pretty good. So I want to set my timer. Oh, wrong thing here. For 1 minute. We want to boil it for a minute. See how I told you it'll start popping. So I'm going to turn the heat down just a little bit because it'll continue to boil without being completely on high. And about 30 seconds into this, I'll just cut the heat completely off and it'll continue to boil. Alright, let it finish boiling for a minute. Just make sure that the sugar's all melted. Everything's all mixed up really good. Like I said, this is really important that you don't stop stirring because it will scorch and burn and you'll ruin your batch of jam. And once this finishes boiling, we are ready to jar it up and process our jars. Now you can double these batches if you're doing large. I'm doing half pint jars, but if you want to do pint jars, you can double this batch. This batch makes about 8 half pints. So if you want to do pints, you can double the batch of the recipe, and because you want to try to fill your canner up as much as you can to keep from wasting time and wasting energy processing just a few jars at a time. But if you only have a few jars and a little bit of jam, that's fine too. Alright, so this is cooked for its minute, and our jars are good and hot. So our next step is going to be to jar it up. So I will take a moment here and show you how I do that. Okay, we're going to jar this up pretty quick because it will start gelling and setting really quick. If we don't, so I'm going to just kind of pull it off of my heat over there. And I'm going to start pulling the hot jars out of the canner. Now, when you buy a canning kit, it generally comes with a jar gripper like this. These are really cheap made. I don't like these kind. These plastic handles start coming apart on you when you're trying to pull stuff out of the canner, which isn't good. So I don't recommend this. I actually invested into a better set of grippers, which works much better. There's nothing on here that's going to come apart and fall apart, at least not for a long time. So I'm going to use this, and I'm going to grab my first hot jar. Out of the canner, okay. And you also want a good ladle. I don't need this spoon. You want a good ladle to ladle this into your jars, and the other thing you need is a good funnel to keep you from making a huge mess, as well as filling your jars. And it's probably going to take about 2 ladles or a little over 2 to fill the jar properly. You don't want to fill it all the way to the rim. You want to leave a little bit of head space. As you can see, hopefully you can see that about right there. So we're going to ladle up all of our jars, and then I will show you the next step after I get all the jars ready to process. Okay. Now we've got all of our jam jarred up, and it only made 6 little jars instead of 8 like I thought it would. So probably when I do the next batch, I'll probably double my batch for these small jars that I'm doing. But the next step is to be sure you wipe the rims of all the jars really well. You don't want any residue to be on these rims because they won't seal if there's anything left, any drippings or anything like that from where you jarred them. These will be very, very hot, so be careful if you're moving these around. I'm moving them by the neck because it's not full all the way to the top, so it's a little more comfortable to handle it like that. And I like having clean cloths laying out because you're going to have drippings and it's going to be a little messy, and those are a little easier to just pull up and wash instead of having a big syrupy mess to clean up when you're done. If these are a little too hot, you can use your jar gripper to move them so you don't burn yourself. Alright. 2 more. And you want to leave about 1/4 inch of head space. A couple of these jars have a little bit more than that. 1/2 inch is fine. You don't want to fill them all the way to the rim, obviously, because as you're cooking them in the canner, they will kind of rise a little bit and destroy any chance of them sealing. And if they don't seal, then you'd have to reprocess them to make them seal, or they won't keep. You'd have to if it doesn't seal, you can put it straight in the refrigerator and still use it. It's not anything that's going to be wasted. Okay, next thing you need is one of these little magnets. You're going to use this to get your lids out of your canner where you have the lids warming. Which are also a little hot. You want to put a lid on each jar. Those are stuck together. Another reason why I like to have my cloth, a clean cloth laid out for this. I'm real conscious about trying to keep things as sanitary as possible. Alright. Put all the lids on. Now the bands, you don't have to worry about sanitizing or boiling your bands because they're not going to be touching any part of your fruit. They simply keep the lids secured into place. Just going to kind of finger tighten them on here. That one's bent, so having some issues with it. Well, let's just put that one aside. Let's try a different one. That one's a little bit bent up. It might be have outlived its usefulness. And I'll tighten these down a little more before I put them in the canner. Okay, and I do have my trusty jar gripper here, which helps me continue to tighten these. So I make sure all my lids are on secure, just finger tight. Alright, and then we're going to put these back in the canner and boil them for 10 minutes. So I will show you in just a second. Okay, we're going to get ready to put the jars in the canner. Your little basket here to help hold them in place. Using the small jars here is a little more difficult to keep them from tipping over, but so we'll have to try to be careful here. But I'm going to place these in the canner. And you can pick them up by the lids because the lids won't be, the bands won't be hot at this point, so try to even these out as I put them in here to keep the weight distributed. Alright. Okay, then I'm going to lower these down very carefully. Like I said, you don't want them to tip over. And you want to be sure you have enough water in the canner to at least cover them for about 1 inch. And then put the lid on. put the heat on high, and you're going to bring it to a complete boil. And when it really starts boiling, you're going to boil them for 10 minutes. And then we'll take them out of the canner at that point and let them sit and cool down, and they should seal. Okay, our jars have boiled. We boiled them for 10 minutes, as I said, and the reason why you want to do that is because that takes care of killing any bacteria or any germs that could be present in the peach batch. It could be present in the jars. So this sanitizes your jam, and it also facilitates getting them to seal. These are our jar grippers. I'm going to take them out of the canner, and I'm going to set them over here on the tiles that I had set out when we were... You okay? Smokey, leave him alone. Alright. Nice, beautiful batches of jam. And like I said, we'll set these over here on our towel, like I said, and let them cool. And they will seal. And you'll know they seal when you hear them pop. The lids will make a little popping sound, and that indicates they've sealed. If for some reason you have a jar that doesn't seal, you just have to basically reprocess it. Take the lid off, throw the lid away, because you can't reuse the lids. The bands, yes, but the lids, no. Cannot be reused. So you would throw that lid away and put a new lid on it, reprocess the whole jar. And that's how you make jam. Okay, so it's been a pretty long day. I started it at about 8:30 this morning, and it's about 20 minutes till 5 this afternoon right now. But I processed 57 half-pint jars of peach jam. And in addition, as I showed you earlier, I was draining off the juice of the peaches before I processed the jam, and I managed to get 3 quarts of juice. So that'll make another 1.5 dozen or 2 dozen half-pint jars of jelly, but I'm not going to do the jelly today. I will put the juice in the refrigerator and probably process the jelly tomorrow. But you can see the fruits of our labor, 57 half-pints of peach jam. I hope everybody who comes to visit this year really likes peach jam, because you're going to go home with some. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of show you the process of what I do when I make jams and jellies. I spend a lot of time canning vegetables that we get out of our garden. We have a big pear tree and a big apple tree, and I can apples in the summertime, and the pears will be ready hopefully mid to late September. I'll start canning pears and pear jam and pear butter and you name it with the pears. But for those of you who are interested in canning, I hope you get a little bit from my video, a few tips and tricks that I've learned over the few years that I've been doing this. And if you decide to delve in, just be prepared to spend a full day when you get ready to can if you do as much as I've done here. This was a 25-pound box of peaches that I picked up this weekend, or this week, from the peach truck that comes to Franklin, Tennessee on Wednesdays. They are done for the season. This week was the last week they were coming, which is why I picked up my second 25-pound box. Last weekend I processed not quite this many jars of jam, and I put some of those peaches I just cut up and put into the freezer instead of making jams and jelly with. But if you decide you would like to start trying to do this for yourself, happy canning!